Thank you very much. You may be seated. If you're following along on the agenda that's been circulated, we are now at item number 7, having completed our closed session earlier before supper. So I'll ask again if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest on the part of the councillors. Okay, thank you very much for that. Our next item then is we were to have 2 delegations. The second one from the District of Parry Sound Social Services, the representatives who are coming are unavailable. But we do have representatives from the Rotary, and they are not Linda West, but David Brunton and John Casera. Welcome, gentlemen. The floor is yours for the next couple of minutes if you wish to present.
Go to the podium. Should you get plugged in?
Yeah, unfortunately, it won't make you any louder, but
Honorable Mayor Comrie, councillors, and staff members. My name is John Kuchera, and I'm the newest member of the Rotary Club, accompanied by our past president, David Brunton, both of us proud members of the former Rotary Club of Parry Sound. I say former Rotary Club of Parry Sound as our membership has recognized that not only does our club serve many organizations and individuals throughout the area, we are supported by many area governments such as yourselves, businesses and individuals. To recognize and identify this, our club membership has adopted the new name, Rotary Club of West Parry Sound. We wish to thank you again for your generous support of Rotary and specifically of our first annual 3H fundraiser, formerly the RACH. I'm new. Thank you for allowing us to present to you today the sponsorship opportunities available for our second annual 3H tournament in support of cancer care at our West Parry Sound Health Center and the many projects and individuals of the Rotary Club of West Parry Sound. Here now is a brief summary of how your donations supported our first annual tournament in 2019.
And we slipped up on being able to have our PowerPoint presentation available for you this evening, so we apologize for that. There's some nice slides with the script to go along with, so I'll have to try and use my script abilities as best I can. The first was we were at the opening ceremonies. Rotarian Donald Sanderson, the CEO of the West Parry Sound Health Center, he piped in, participates for the opening ceremonies, and then along with yours truly, presented a special commemorative poster to Dr. Tom and Mrs. Joanne Higgins.
And on the next slide, lots of things to do. And people of all ages gathered and we're having fun.
The weather, play ball. Well, never in the past 15 years of the RACH had we ever experienced extreme weather conditions consisting of persistent high winds and monsoon rains. However, there was no match for the overwhelming spirit of ball players who rallied on. We couldn't keep them off the field, and some were creative in using illegal ball equipment where they had umbrellas covering their heads. It was so wet. They persevered through, played on.
And fun was had by all. Theaters were donated by Ace Rentals and Georgian Rentals to help players dry out and keep warm, milking for their spirits as they never can lose.
How does Rotary raise and spend monies? Every year Rotary has a new theme, and this year's being Rotary Connects the World. Some of the very sound and area examples of fundraisers our club hosts are ticket sales for draws, our annual cash calendars, barbecues. We apply for district grants, sponsorships, and major fundraisers such as our Savor the Sound and our 3-pitch.
And so this year, we have received a $6,000 grant from the district. We applied for the maximum allowed, and one out of 2 matching grants that were issued this year, and we were approved for both enabling our club to donate double the funds, one example being in support of the historic railway exhibit at the museum.
Projects for children. Our donation enabled 5 children to attend summer camp who otherwise would not have had the opportunity, as well as supporting Strings Across the Sky, enabling local area youth the opportunity to experience learning, reading, and performing music. October means polio. And how did Parry Sound do in 2019? On the international level of Rotary's mission to eradicate polio forever, our club raised $3,000 locally, which was tripled to $9,000 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which enabled 15,000 children to be vaccinated against polio.
Christmas hampers for 100 families. Rotary's 10th annual program in partnership with the Salvation Army, local businesses and donations from individuals. 100 local families enjoyed a Christmas dinner complete with turkey and broiler trimmings.
Inspired filmmaking with an iPad, in partnership with the Trillium Foundation and the Town of Parry Sound, a $40,000 grant enabled Rotary to offer this innovative film program designed for a new generation of storytellers. This year's film study is to capture stories and memoirs of area World War II vets.
Regarding mobility devices, our club receives an ever-increasing number of requests from local area residents annually seeking financial assistance for various mobility and supported devices. And through a screening procedure, we are able to provide 75% of the cost. Then there are major projects. Rotary has made large donations over the years supporting many area projects such as $25,000 towards the purchase of the Salvation Army's new public service vehicle, the hospice atrium at the West Parry Sound Health Center, continuing expansion of area fitness trails, and the kitchen at the Stockley Center.
The Rotary Club of West Parry Sound thanks you. And with your support, collectively, we donated $20,000 directly to the Cancer Care Program to assist in the purchase of a cover slipper piece of equipment in the lab at our West Parry Sound Health Center. This year's project is a lymph node tester, which will aid in testing lymph nodes right in our health center, making diagnosis quicker, accurately, and with greater convenience and cost savings to patients by eliminating the need to travel. And when we worked with the foundation, we were able to direct the funds with input from medical staff of various levels at the foundation, or at the health center, pardon me. The money goes through the foundation because they support us with this event. There's no overhead, and it goes directly to the projects that we're able to designate. I think it's important to clarify that as well, so it just doesn't get lost in the general coffers or experience a large overhead. For your consideration, we have many opportunities to suit anybody's budget for sponsorship opportunities. And if you don't see it on the chart, we'll just ask and we'll create it for you. Please. At this point in time, we have We're really, really excited to say that Connor Industries is our platinum sponsor this year. We have 2 gold and silver sponsors at this point in time. And just a note about the silver sponsorship as well, we've also created the band's sponsorship, which wasn't quite highlighted or updated on your sponsorship opportunities. So the silver includes sponsorship, which is a large sign that's mounted behind the stage for the event. And slide 17, as you can see, the rally continues. This year's focus is baseball basics. So that is to ensure, try to have the 32 teams enrolled. Sign-up started last week, and we're up to 22 teams already. We're really excited about the enthusiasm shown there. I'm sure that we'll get close, if not a whole slate of a team signing up. And we're excited to say that we're having a mini craft beer festival in conjunction with Trestle Brewing Company. There'll be 4 breweries represented during the day on Saturday. Through the help of Joe Bamford, we've secured 5-time Country Male Singer Nominee of the Year, Marshall Dane and his band. They'll be playing on Friday evening for your entertainment pleasure. And of course, favorite features, which locals look forward to every year, and that's our pickerel fish dinner and our silent auction. So with that, we'd like to say thank you so much again for your time this evening and your past generosity, and hopefully you can count on your support again this year.
Thank you very much. Questions from councillors? Or Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, congratulations on changing the name to Rotary Club of West Parry Sound. Is that this year you did that?
Yes, in response actually to the initial comments made by your council last year's presentation.
Yeah, I think I made that comment, so I'm congratulating you as a result of it. Anyway, what we do here is we have all our donations go, and we look at all of them at one time and develop a budget, etc. So I'm sure we'll look at this as we did last year. So, but I can't help but make an appeal also out here. If it's truly a West Parry Sound Rotary Club, we also have a project on the go. We're expanding our library and turning it into a bigger facility with naming it probably a technology type center. And you know, it's very important to the kids and whatever. And we're near our goal, and all these ladies and gentlemen here are on the library board. So I'm sure that the Rotary Club could look favorably if they sent you a letter asking for a little bit of support from the Rotary Club. Would that be possible?
Yeah, it would be. In fact, even better than that, if they were yes, initial letter, and then with some contact information. 2 of our meetings every month, we meet weekly, so 2 of our meetings every month we have special guests come and present to the club. So I think that would be very opportunistic for you to come on in and do a presentation, see if we garner some support from the membership.
You'll probably ask tomorrow in a telephone call, when's the next meeting? I know them very well.
All right.
But anyway, congratulations on last year's event. I understand it was very, very popular. And now all the funds from the 3-pitch, all the funds go to the hospital. Is that true or untrue? Or
Well,
some of them?
Not all the funds.
Okay.
Historically, when it was the rate, all the online funds that were raised through donations as well as sponsorships for the ball players went directly to Prince Margaret Hospital, and then there was the monies raised on the weekend went towards the foundation, the hospital, the local hospital.
Okay.
So we're trying to follow that same model, but all of the online donations would go directly to the foundation over the hospital through the foundation, and then monies raised on the weekend would go towards our local Rotary Club and all the projects kind of that we've outlined here this evening.
Good job.
Councillor McEwen.
And we were cheap, so it is.
I must tell you, I worked for many, many years for an architect firm in the States that was actually the inventor of the modern library, so I can contribute if you like.
Excellent.
Thanks for coming up, Dave and John. Have a nasty ride home potentially in the snow. It's pretty amazing that you have 22 teams. Maybe it could be winter ball instead of summer ball. Good luck with the rest of it. Safe journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and we will, we do have your request for a sponsorship, and it's on, it will come up in our budget meeting, which is in March, on the
Next March, 17th or 16th?
17th or 9th, anyway. It'll come up in
16th.
March, not this month, but the next one.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not gonna let him out.
So,
She's not gonna let them out the door.
our next item is the consent agenda, and you can see there, the motion I'm looking for, I'll read it to you. Whereas the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the consent agenda consisting of the 6 items that are listed there, and also unfinished business, which is listed on page 4 of the agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council hereby receives and or approves the items contained in the consent agenda dated February 18th, 2020. So, first of all, can I get a mover and seconder, please, for that motion? All right, moved by Councillor McEwen, seconded by Councillor Woods. Are there any items that you wish to take off the consent agenda for discussion? Councillor Gorham Matthews.
Under the rec committee's minutes, they were asking for feedback from council regarding Canada Day. Should we discuss that, or is that coming up? They're asking for feedback with the Canada Day this year.
You know what? Thank you for reminding me. All right, so let's pull 11. Okay, I'm just going to make a note here because it's on excluding item 11.1.5, and that's Rec Committee, February. Okay, is there anything else that we should take out of the list? Hearing nothing, I will put the question then as it's written. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Thank you. We have done that. And now we could take a quick look, if you like, at 11.1.5, just trying to get it up here. Just to let you know, there are 2 sets of minutes from the Recreation Committee. The one that's there from November has been approved by the Recreation Committee, but the ones from February 4th have not been approved, so they're just really here for information. And they're here primarily for 2 reasons. One is to capture the budget request, which the committee discussed at that meeting. So you can see that there is a sheet there at the back of the report, which lists, and it's only the projects at the beginning of the total 20,500. The other things are things that really don't belong to the rec committee and are appear in other places in the budget, so we don't need to concern us. So that was the first thing. The second thing, there was a discussion about Canada Day, and many of you will recall that the issue that emerged last year where Canada Day did not fall on a weekend, this year it falls in fact on a Wednesday in 2020. And originally the fireworks were part of the whole program and were to take place on the Wednesday, and council, after some discussion, asked that they be moved. And they were moved, in fact, to the Saturday, and we had a very good fireworks show on the Saturday, and I think it went, but it was kind of a last-minute disruption considering the number of folks that we had working on things. And the other side issue was that we managed to, that day that managed to coincide with the pork roast dinner that the Legion were having. So on the assumption that the Legion will have the pork roast on Saturday this year, which is our information to the best of our knowledge at the moment, the thought was that maybe the Canada Day celebrations, including the fireworks, could be held on Sunday, June 28th. Somebody is going to ask, well, why don't you do it on July the 4th, which is the following weekend? The organizers of the other events that we run on Canada Day are not available on that particular day, and so it turned out not to be a good day for the rec committee to try to do what it needs to do. So at the moment, the suggestion is Sunday, June 28th. There's no resolution in front of you about this at this particular stage because we still have a little bit of time to talk about it. But it would be good to get some feedback if any of the councillors wish to weigh in at this point. It would be helpful to the rec committee. Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it was a bit of kerfluffle last year, and it was left with the rec committee, which was in sort of a state of somewhat disarray and so on, and picking dates and such. But as it turned out, that moving to the weekend when people are here, I think it was picking or hitting as many folks as possible, and that was the objective in the end. So this looks like it's the same approach.
Yes, it is the same. The theory, of course, is that there are some, and it's hard to determine because when you have a Canada Day in the middle of a week, you never know when people are really going to be here. But some seasonal residents will get, they'll get the Wednesday off for Canada Day, and that's it, right? So if we have the fireworks on the weekend, there's at least on either the Saturday or Sunday. Friday's probably too early. Monday, some of them won't be here yet by the time the fireworks start, and some others, Monday isn't so good either because it isn't the stat holiday. So folks who are you have to work that week will be going back wherever they're going. So that kind of leaves us with the Saturday or Sunday if we want to maximize the exposure to the events that we're doing. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, it being on a Wednesday really puts it in a different sort of bailiwick. If it was on a Tuesday where people take Monday and Tuesday, or if it was on the Friday, like right smack in the middle of the week is a difficult time. And my gut right off the bat is to keep it on July 1st, because it's on a Wednesday, right? Which is the opposite of what was last year, but it worked out well last year. I don't think it should be Sunday the 28th, because that isn't satisfying anyone. If you're a cottager and you're up here for the weekend, you're probably not going to stay till 10 something at night on a Sunday night before you drive back to your home and go to work for the week, right? So I don't agree with it being on Sunday. I guess I could see it being on a Saturday. You're saying the pig roast is on the 27th, or the pig roast is on the 4th, or do we know?
Well, we have a representative of the Legion who's on the committee, and she advised us that, to the best of her knowledge, it was that the pig roast would be the 27th.
If I were picking a Saturday,
No, I mean,
I'd pick a Saturday over a Sunday, because I don't think Sunday satisfies.
I think we would have too, but as you recall, we kind of caught them off guard. And I mean, it's hard to know how much in theory, we didn't really interfere too much, because the dinner, people came from the dinner and arrived here well in time for the fireworks. They didn't, mind you, they missed the events that were for the kids out here, like the cardboard boat race and so on, which was a lot of fun, and I think they, no, I mean, there's other possible, this is why we're having this discussion, there's other possible things. I mean, we could go back to the Legion and say to them, what about doing it on the following week on July 4th, and maybe that works as well for them. But in their current calendar, the planning was to do it on the 26th. So the only reason we went to Sunday was to avoid that conflict. If we would have said Saturday if it hadn't been for.
Well, I don't think we should do it on a Sunday. I think it doesn't fit into anybody's planning. You've got cottagers going back, you've got other people who firmly believe that you should celebrate on the day of the holiday, and there is a group of those people. So from my standpoint, I would either say leave it on July the 1st or move it to July the 4th. And my gut and my mind, if I ever had to make a decision right now, and I don't, is leave it on the 1st because it's on a Wednesday. So you're going to have people off all over the place, right? And at least it's on the day of the holiday. And then next year, if it's Thursday, you can maybe move it to the Saturday or something, right? But that's just, I didn't know this was coming up tonight, so I didn't give it a lot of thought.
To be honest, it caught me a little. I had forgotten that was in the minute, that was in the minutes, and I wasn't planning to raise it tonight. But it's, I mean, it's useful to think about. Other municipalities, like notably the town of Parry Sound, which has generally a substantial fireworks, they do theirs on Canada Day, whenever Canada Day is. They don't move it. And we had a number of folks, by the way, in the community who in this community, who said the same thing to us. Why are we doing it on a day? It's Canada Day. It's not, whatever. Why are we doing it on a different day? But anyway, that's why we're having the discussion. The committee is trying its best to accommodate the wishes of the most number of people and avoid conflict, avoid conflicts. That's where we're at with it. Councillor McKeon.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I went through this with the rec committee for 3 or 4 years, and we always had the same sort of issues. And I do hear from a number of people that it should be on the actual day, on the 1st. However, last year I said I go at the wish, the interest, and the work of the committee, and it ended up being changed. So I know the committee plays a big part in it. And secondly, do we receive a grant if we don't hold it on Canada Day? I thought it was specified that we...
Sorry, I can answer that question. The answer is not anymore. Okay, it used to be you had to do it. The grant for fireworks had to be for things that were done, and for other things had to be done on Canada Day. We investigated this last year, and there is no specific date is tied to it anymore. So we will get whatever we get. It's also not as much money as it used to be. It used to be at one time, I think in,
3,000.
it was like 2,500 or 3,000. Last year it was $800, and that's, I believe that's what it's going to be this year. So,
But last year we had two, because we didn't have it the year before that. So
Yeah.
we had double the money.
we had the fireworks that we purchased for 2018 that we couldn't use because of the fire ban. And we also used the 800 to buy some more. So that's why we had such a bigger than normal fireworks display. Okay, so are there any other comments at this point in time? Councillor Gore Matthews, since you brought this subject up.
Well, I was just bringing it up because I didn't want it to get missed
Well, thank you.
in
You're,
the discussion thing, but, I prefer either the 27th or 4th, one of the Saturdays. I guess it depends on the committee scope of the activities that they're planning, in terms of how it would conflict with the Legion. Because last year they had food in here. I think it was Betty's that was here.
Yes.
And they didn't do very well. And Legion didn't do very well last year. They kind of blamed each other for canceling each other out in terms of food sales. So I think depending on going on the 27th, it depends on the scope of celebrations they're planning, in terms of what they do. If they're doing a band, if they're having food, I think that's a determinant as well.
well, we haven't got that far along in terms of, it's a good point you're raising. We haven't got that far along in terms of exactly what's happening. I think the plan is to continue to have a number of activities that are designed for families. The cardboard boat thing was a success. People had a lot of fun with that. They will probably try to do that again. We will probably try to do that again. We will have some, I think the intention is that we would have some refreshments here for people, so that, because when you go to a thing like that, if you're coming in the afternoon or close to supper time, people typically want to be able to get something, and it won't be a sit-down dinner with the pig, right? But it'll be anyway. So, but we're still working on that, and it would be, as I said before, the goal was simply to try to avoid conflicts, and there may be other things that can be done to move it, but maybe we could do it on the 27th, but or on the Saturday, but right now it doesn't look so good.
I know in Magnetawan they do all of their activities actually on Canada Day, but then they put their fireworks on a separate day for on the Saturday night, either before or after Canada Day. All their stuff doesn't operate on the same day. Now that's asking volunteers to organize. It's basically two separate events, but that's the way they do theirs, so it captures the people are there and they actually celebrate Canada Day, but then still have the fireworks that includes everyone.
So you've just articulated the response I got when I suggested that, which is it's extra work for the volunteers to do. Now, mind you, the volunteers don't have to do anything for the fireworks. We have one
person who does the fireworks.
I shouldn't say we have one person. We have some staff that help with things, and we have the fire department typically does things and helps to keep people from getting in the way of the fireworks, which some have a propensity to do. But the actual rec committee itself doesn't have to do, I don't know, maybe that's not I think there was some concern about the real July 1st for other reasons, but I'll take all of that back and we'll see what we can come up with.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you for your, anything else before we move on? Okay, well, thank you for that. All right. That takes us then to item number 12, which is the accounts payable. And just have to turn over some pages here. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby approves accounts payable in the amount of $219,000.10 and payroll in the amount of $55,934.28 for payment. Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Discussion or questions, sorry. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I have a couple. Excuse me. 34,537 John Jackson plan. Total bill's 3884 for the, I guess for the month or whatever. But there's only one of these codes, $658, that seems to be associated with a file. I guess Lamont is a file, I take it? But all the other ones just say general planning, general planning, general planning, general planning. So are they, I always like it to be associated with a file so that we then know that those costs are being, charged back to the applicant or whatever. So I don't know exactly, or if not, at least they should say that was for that bylaw, or that was for research on that. It's a lot of money and we don't know what files are associated.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
Judy can respond.
Thank you. Judy, can you help out with that particular one?
Yeah, so they are, there is the one that's attributed to a current case. The others are not. They're general consulting is the way that we get the invoices, and they were not assigned to any particular.
Okay, then I would ask in the future that we don't accept invoices like that someone has to give us something more than just saying general consulting. How do we ever audit that at the end of the month that we spent, in this case, 3,800, of which we can allocate 600, so 3,000, we don't know what it's to. It's just, it could be 4,000. Why isn't it 5,000?
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Thank you. There are times where we use Mr. Jackson for advice on items, and those costs are related to the municipality having to pay those costs. There was I'm seeing here that there were actually some Mr. Greenwood-related costs that should have been noted, and obviously Lamont. There was there's a couple here that I would agree that were related to the official plan amendment to the trailers. So those are our costs. There's a couple more here, and what I need to do is go back and we can work with our accounts payable folks to be a little clearer in here.
I mean, I think they could be approved tonight. I don't want to make it up, but I think in the future it should say what it's about.
Thank you. I don't disagree. That's something that we have agreed to in the past, and we'll certainly make sure that that's done in the future.
Thank you. I have another question on.
Could I speak to that just briefly?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
When I've signed those John Jackson Planning Inc., sign off on them representing the municipality, I am surprised. And Councilor Lamb, you have a good question because there's very little detail, none basically on this sheet. But the accompanying documentation is fairly complete, and I've talked to our treasurer to discuss each particular sheet and to legitimize it a certain amount. So it's certainly much more complete than what you see here.
Thank you. 34555, Russell Christie, and this is $2,352, and it says admin, auditor, legal, and there are two names attached to that. One is P. O'Connor and the other one is Latchman. Are these tax sales? Or what are they?
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The O'Connor invoice is related to the sale of property. As council may recall, there was a purchase from property from Mr. O'Connor. And that's the last invoice that kind of tidies up that transaction. The other is related to a tax issue.
Okay, and I guess it's okay to use the person's name, or should we not put the person's name on something like that?
I would agree.
Because that's public, right? So I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong. It's, okay, thank you.
I'll take care of
That's all
that
I
in the
have.
future.
Okay, other,
Sorry, I got one more.
okay,
34575, Fred Dean. I know Fred from the course I took when I first got on council way back. Why are we paying Fred Dean? Was he here doing some training or something?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
yeah, go ahead.
So it's one of two things, and Judy will look it up. Fred Dean does online seminars, online workshops. There was a workshop that Paul and I attended on my computer, and there's one that's been recently signed up for, and I believe it's related to Councillor Wood, new councillor training.
Okay. Thank you, that's all I need.
Oh, you're good?
Yes, that's what it was. That's what it is. Okay, are there any other questions or comments about these? No? All right, thank you. I will call the question on the motion then to accept these, the accounts payable and payroll. All those in favor, please indicate. Thank you, that's carried. That then brings us to item 13, which is a staff report on the Whitestone Hagerman Memorial Library expansion project. So maybe that's the last time you're going to hear the whole name. Is that right? I noticed it doesn't say memorial on the agenda, but I remember looking it up to see what it was officially called. Madam CAO Clerk, are you giving this report?
I am.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intent of this report is to keep council updated on where we are with the project. Moving along, as you know, municipality hired FAD Architects to do the design and engineering work. And I would say it's substantially complete at this point. There's a meeting on Friday that will wrap up the design components that the library wants to look at. Moving a wall here and a table there, just minor. They're working on the mechanical and the electrical at this point. And the intent would be that the project would be tender ready by the second week in March. Now that's the design work. In terms of the funding, we have $150,000 confirmed from Trillium. There's money from the library board, their fundraising activities in the amount of about $100,000, I believe. The municipality contributed $75,000 last year in the budget, and we'll probably only need about $50,000 of that. And the remaining $150,000 has been a funding request through FedNor. So the way FedNor works is there's 2 stages to the application. There's phase 1, and they look at it to see if in fact they're interested in the application, and they were. And they gave us some good hints about it being a technology center and more of a business focus for the library, which we took into consideration. We then, once we got approval for phase 1, they sent us on to phase 2. That's been in their hands for probably 3 weeks, and we've been back and forth on changing some wording, giving some financial information, and as of last Friday, they have confirmed that phase 2 is complete. And from that point, they have up to 80 days, 80 working days to confirm whether or not we will receive the funding. So the one thing that council has to consider is we could go to tender. And I put some dates on here that would be reasonable. If we went to tender March 9th, we close April 2nd, possible award on April 20th, although it's tight in writing the report, at the very latest, the first week in May. And then, with contract management, an early June start. We don't have confirmed funding from FedNor, and in fact, we haven't done our budget discussions yet. So there's a bit of a gap in terms of that $150,000, and the decision should be made. Do we go ahead with the tender process, or do we wait for the confirmed funding, whatever the source may be? So there's that piece. Secondly, as everyone knows, there's an old garage that's on municipal property adjacent to the library, and there has been an idea and some interest that we could actually declare that garage surplus and put it up for auction and sell it. And there may be some folks that may be interested in it, and it's certainly worth a try. So those are 2 decisions that need to be made at this point, and I really just wanted to tell council where we are with the project, and it's certainly getting very exciting, coming very near to what's been envisioned for a number of years.
The one other thing that, if I could get you to clarify, is when do we believe we would find out if we were getting the FedNor money or not? Can you? I know you can elaborate on it because you answered my question earlier. I just want everybody else to hear it.
The only thing I can tell council and those folks in the audience is what I've heard from FedNor, and that is their standard answer, which is they commit to giving us the information within 80 working days. Because I've been working with this gentleman on this application as well as one for CINO, which I'm going to talk about later, for the Economic Development Committee. He's indicated that in most situations it doesn't take 80 days, but that's what they would say is off the record. Once it goes beyond his desk, he really has no control over it. So I guess the answer is within 80 working days.
And the clock on the 80 working days has already started, though, correct?
The clock on the 80 working days started last Friday when they advised that our application was complete and was now moving on to the evaluation process.
So that 80 working days would put us, that's 90 plus calendar days, so that would put us into June.
Something like that. It's 12 weeks.
To get to know for sure whether we're... I just wanted to get that on the table because I think councillors need to have that in the back of their minds when we're talking about the budget, of course. Anyway, well, we'll have the discussion and then we'll focus in on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, the Trillium grant itself, 150,000. I thought, maybe I'm wrong or right, that we need to start the construction this year and complete it by next year, or we don't get the 150,000. Is that true or untrue?
We need, through you, Mr. Mayor. We do need to start the construction this year. I don't have all the details on the Trillium funding piece. Our treasurer has been working with them, but I believe you're correct that we need to get started this year, and there's a time frame for utilizing that funding.
And no one in the history of Trillium grants, I don't think, has ever said, we're not going to meet the deadline and give you your 150 back, that we haven't even got, right? I mean, we're in my mind, we're going to have to proceed on this, whether we do it now or in June or whatever, and the build date, you know, whether it's June, it'll just move to September or August or whatever, but we can't lose sight that this can't be pushed off, for instance, till next year. We won't have any funding and we'll be deeper in the hole, right? So
I think that's correct,
it's
yes.
just a matter of timing, I guess. The only other thing I'd like to mention is that the library has also received in the last week or two another grant for 25. No, you can't say that? Oh, well, I'm not going to tell you that. They told me this afternoon I could, but anyway, sorry about that.
Our ears are closed.
My ears are closed. Sorry, I apologize.
That's what happens after 49 years of marriage, you get some signals.
Sorry, okay, anyway, I'll take that comment back.
All right.
The only other thing I'd say is the garage has to come down anyway. It's not being used, so we might as well, at minimum, proceed with getting
This
that
one
part
is
done,
proceed to
right?
tender, and this one is...
It's a no.
I know, that's-
Oh, I didn't know if you
Lot.
noticed,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's,
I think we should take the whole thing, because what happens if the bids come in and we need to then rejig the bids or go out a second time or do something, right? I don't know how the bidding process works, but I know when we built other buildings, it just didn't go real smooth, and within 4 weeks you were getting a bid that was okay, and away you go. So I want to make sure there's enough, you know, time to massage whatever we need to, because we don't have to take a bid, do we? Question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Typically, when you go to tender, you would take the lowest bid. Now, you can collapse a tender and not take any bids. I've seen that happen. So you could,
we reserve the right not to accept any
award,
bid.
yeah.
That's a standard
so
out
bids
clause
can-
in case you don't like any of the bids you got. I mean, somebody could give you a low bid, and the low bid could be, you could be very concerned about whether it's going to get you what you want or not. You say, no, sorry, we're not going to do this. But it annoys the vendor community, the bidder community, if you do that.
Well, in fairness, we've had the opposite experience here of trying to get someone to bid on a
Exactly,
project, right?
yes.
Particularly up
Yeah.
at the Rhodes Garage, we had,
Yeah.
you know, that case. But anyway.
Well, that is another argument in favor of trying to get the ball rolling, because you might, you allow a month, but you might not get
Well,
what you want in a, you might not get anything, or might not get what you want in a month, and might have to go again. So, anyway, Councillor McEwen is next.
Yeah, one comment was that we should proceed with the garage, like the shed, get it out of there one way or another, whether we pay to or get paid to have it removed. We don't know yet, but we should proceed with that one. I guess secondly, do we have any numbers looking at, say, debenturing or taking some from reserve, doing a combination of manipulating numbers from a budget point of view? Like, say we did borrow the whole $200,000. Do we know what those numbers would be annualized or?
sorry.
Well, can we get an answer to either from you or Judy?
We did look into that. Taking the funding, sorry. We did look into taking the funding through our surplus. And that's all part of the budget process.
If I may, so the budget you'll see tomorrow doesn't
Right, it's tomorrow,
include
though, yeah.
$150,000. And
does or doesn't?
it does not.
Okay.
It does not. We're cautiously optimistic about the FedNor funding, but obviously we can't say a firm yes. Now, the person to ask that information of is the treasurer tomorrow when she's here. and what it would look like in terms of debt availability and, you know, what a finance would look like for that 150,000.
Okay, Councillor Gorham Matthews.
So one of my questions, Councillor Lamb already asked, was about how soon we had to use that Trillium Foundation money and not lose it. My second comment is when this came up last year, in order for the library board to apply for these grants, we did make the commitment that we would cover the difference if they got one grant and not all the grants. So I think in terms of keeping the funding that we have secured, that we need to proceed as if we're going to hopefully get the rest of the funding, but we did commit last year that we would cover the rest of the funding if it didn't come out.
Okay.
Well, unless somebody else wants.
No, go ahead.
Historically, the last 5 years, we've looked at investments like this, and I agree that I think we're going to get the Fednor money, and I think this is an amazing story when you consider a small community like us being able to put a project together like this at very little taxpayer cost potentially, right? But even if there is an investment of another 150,000 beyond what we think, it's well worth it in the community, and I think we all kind of know that. I happened to be down at a library conference a couple weeks ago in Toronto, and I saw some of the furniture and some of the things that could be done in this library, and you know, we've got 3 meeting rooms. It's all well spaced and well designed, and for the kids in this community and for everyone, believe me, this will be knocked out of the ballpark, and I think we'll all be, you know, very proud of what we do. But historically, what we've done over the last 5 years is we've taken a look at building expansions like that as an investment in the future. Communities like ours can't just go find 200 and 400 and 500,000 out of the blue in a tax year. So we've looked at it and said, amortize, if we need to borrow money, amortize the money over 15 years or 20 years, and it becomes, you know, 25,000 a year or something, as opposed to, or whatever the number is, right? So I think Councilman McEwen's question was very well pointed, that I've always personally felt that if we didn't come up with the funding, I never thought we would, you know, say, hand over a check for $200,000. That's very difficult for us, but we can finance it. And that's what we should be doing with assets like this.
Yeah.
So I, along with Councillor Gorham Matthews, I think we should just proceed, and I don't see where the big risk is. I think we're just, if we do, we're just delaying for the wrong reasons.
Okay, well, thank you. Let me read a motion to you that is suggested, and we'll see if we get a mover and seconder. It's in 4 parts. So the first part is that council hereby receives report admin 2020-03 Whitestone Hagerman Memorial Public Library Expansion Project update and next steps. I hope everybody will agree with that, because otherwise we shouldn't have been discussing it. The second part is, and that council hereby declares the garage building adjacent to the Whitestone Memorial Public Library as a surplus asset. Third part, that council does hereby direct staff to advertise for the sale and disposal of the garage building. And finally, the fourth part, that council hereby directs staff to proceed to tender for the expansion project for the Whitestone Hagerman Memorial Public Library once the final engineering and design work is complete in early March 2020. Is there a mover and seconder?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Gorham Matthews. More discussion. Any discussion? Are you ready for the question then? All those in favor of the motion? Thank you. The motion is carried. The next item is, there are a couple of bylaws for us to at least talk about. The first one, 14.1, is I'm sorry, just, oh, okay, so it's a different tab in my binder, but that's all right. So the first one has to do with our helipad in Ardbeg. And there is an agreement under which we maintain, under which we agreed to maintain the helipad. Thank you, folks, for coming. So this bylaw is essentially to enter into an agreement with Orange, which we do, every 3 years, to maintain the helipad so that they can land they can land there to pick up people if necessary. And there are a bunch of obligations, if you read all the fine print, that we take on. Their only obligation, I guess, is to inspect it, and they typically pay us $3,500 a year, which is supposed to cover the cost of clearing the snow in the winter. I'm looking at our fire chief here. Is that's all it's really supposed to cover. So if we have to do additional work to grade it or...
No, you can use it for other stuff.
Oh.
Grass, cutting down trees, whatever it needs to be done.
So we have a contract with some third party to actually clear the snow. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do we know what that costs, by the way?
It should be in your budget package. It's right around, I think it's right around $4,000. That includes the helipad and the 2 standpipes, the one on the bunny.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. All right.
That's in the road.
So I was asking earlier today, is it fair to say that the $3,500 doesn't necessarily cover our expenses associated with maintaining the helipad, or does it?
If it was just the helipad, yeah, probably.
It would? Okay. Anyway, this is, I'll read the motion to you. This is kind of a routine administrative thing that we've been doing for a while, and we just want to renew it. But so the motion is that bylaw 09-2020, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Orange for the maintenance of the helipad, surrounding area, and easement agreement, to be read a first and second time this 18th day of February 2020. I'll stop there for now. So we're looking for a mover and seconder to approve the agreement. Somebody want to do that? I see Councillor Woods first, Councillor McEwen seconded. Is there any discussion or anything that you see in the agreement that you think needs to be amended? No concerns? Okay, so and further read a third time passed and properly signed and sealed this 18th day of February 2020 and numbered 09-2020. All those in favor of that motion? Thank you, it's carried. So we have an approved helipad now for another 3 years. That's all. The only trick now is to get them to actually use it, right? Okay. The second second bylaw item 14.2 is an agreement. It's a so-called the 5126, so the section of the Municipal Act that permits us to have such agreements. and it relates to a property that we already had processed through our planning. I'll read you the motion. That bylaw 10-2020, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement for conditions of approval of consent B19/2019W under the Planning Act, the owner is William Ferris, to be read a first and second time this 18th day of February 2020, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this 18th day of February 2020, numbered 09/2020. So can I get a mover and seconder for that one? Councillor Gorman Matthews. Seconder? Councillor McEwen. If you read the notes associated with this, you'll see the sort of history of the whole thing. It did go through the it did go through the planning board and through us previously, and you can see the record of what we did there has been compiled by staff. So this is simply showing the agreement and asking for council's approval, authorizing us being myself and the clerk, to enter into that agreement on behalf of the municipality. Any questions or comments about this one? No? Yes?
I believe we were only waiting for this to come back through Mr. Jackson. Once it was registered on title, we put a requirement that if the land were to be rezoned, they would pay the parkland fee.
Yeah,
minimum
that's correct.
of 9,000 or 5%, whichever was greater. So that was put on title. That is complete and signed back to us, I believe.
Well, when you say sign back to us, it can't be. We have to approve of the agreement before it can be registered.
Okay, I thought it was registered. No.
No, am I right?
It's not registered yet,
All right,
but the
sorry.
consent agreement, Mr. Mayor, the consent agreement says that shall be registered on title.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is what allows them to actually get title to the thing. They can't. The property doesn't change hands until we have this agreement in place, so this is our sort of our last the last approval that we have on the thing, and so then if they don't do any of the things if they don't satisfy any of the conditions, then there's an agreement between us and the landowner that we can come back to them on. Otherwise, they'd say, now I got title to the property, I can do what I want, right? By the way, this needs to be cleaned up. I forgot to mention that to you this morning, but that's okay. All right, so if there's nothing further, then I'll call the question on this on this, and we'll proceed. Can I call a question? All in favor? Thank you. Contrary minded?
No, I'm going to oppose it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I saw you sitting there. I thought he's going to vote against. Is that what? I should give you an opportunity
I opposed
to.
it when it came up initially.
You did, that's correct,
It's pretty hard
yes.
for me to
I remember.
accept it. Although I am happy that the provision was put in
Yeah.
there. I just think
Yeah.
it sets a terrible precedent for the future. That's my concerns.
Okay, well, thank you. That's. And that brings us then to our third bylaw. And this bylaw is simply here for information, and we'll talk about it. I'll let the clerk introduce it, and then we'll talk about it for a bit. So can I get a motion that bylaw, and it's listed as XX-2020 because we don't have a number until we actually are ready to pass it, which we're not ready to do tonight, I would say. being a bylaw to establish a public notice policy be received for information. Mover and seconder?
I'll move it.
Okay, and Councillor Woods seconds. So now we can have discussion, and if I may, I'll ask the clerk to introduce where this came from, why we're doing it, why we're doing it now, and
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by letting you know that the Municipal Act prescribes municipalities shall have 9 specific policies. Sale and disposal of land, staff-council relations, which is something we worked on last year, a procurement policy, which we have, to name a few, the manner in which a municipality will protect and enhance the tree canopy, pregnancy leaves for, those are new. And one of them is related to the manner in which a municipality, the circumstance in which a municipality shall provide notice to the public, and if notice is to be provided, the form, manner, and times notice shall be given. So that's why we have what we call the notice policy. And I appreciate that the second page of my memo is confusing, and all those notes are really intended for the clerks for posterity so that we know why we're making these changes. We have 5 bylaws that speak to public notice. 3 of them are linked, that are amendments, and 2 of them are standalone. There's some repetitiveness, and there's also a significant number of the reference to the Municipal Act that has since been repealed, what were repealed in 2006. So because we are moving towards fees and charges bylaws, we're going to have a procedure bylaw in the near future, where all these things we're working on, I thought it was timely to start looking at our notice bylaw, clean it up, make it a little bit more readable. We looked at a lot of other, what municipalities did, and I have to do a bit of shout out to Paula Macri, who did an awful lot of work on this when she was acting deputy clerk. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot of research and trying to find the best way to create notice. So that is why this is before you. I had a nice long conversation with Mayor Comrie today, and there's still some work to be done on this. But what I need council to look at is the last 2 pages of the bylaw and the information that's in red, and the notice periods, to see if you're comfortable with those. And as the mayor said, there's no decisions to be made tonight, but the idea is that we are become a little bit more prescriptive on where things are advertised and how they're posted. We need to incorporate social media into this at some point because we're working on our communications bylaw. So I'm here to take comments either now or in the future on how we give public notice for certain things. And a good example is we give public notice of passing a budget. We want to give public notice for our fees and charges bylaw. And even though our current public notice bylaw doesn't, a number of the references repealed, symbolically municipalities should and can give public notice for passing the fees and charges bylaw, for instance. So I hope that was explanatory enough. We are required to have a policy, and just what the policy looks like and how it's somewhat simplified from my previous ones, and how it looks like compared to others is up for further discussion. You'll see this again.
So just to maybe help you focus the discussion a little bit, there are, if you look at what is kind of being proposed to be changed, which are, you'll see bits of red in here. Currently, our current bylaw, and I guess that's the most recent one because there are several notice bylaws there, as you can see, but that are on the books, but the current one has 14 days, and there is a suggestion on someone's part that in some cases these should be increased to 21 days, and I'll be candid with you. I question the advisability of that. It seems to me that we want to have as much flexibility as we can. There are some other sort of, I'll just tell you some generic comments that I made to the clerk when I first read it. There are a few situations in here that are not covered. For example, if you look at the ones related to closing of a road, these are closing of shore road allowance and municipal concession allowances. And in that particular case, I see that in the category of things that we have discussed before under planning issues, and I think a longer notice period is important there, and a wider circulation, maybe not in those cases, might be appropriate. But then there are situations like, what about a temporary closing of a road for maintenance purposes, like the closing of Balsam Road, for example? If you think, when we did it a year ago, if you think back on that one, we couldn't have possibly have given them 21 days. We were playing the whole thing by ear. So, and the same is true of the Bunny Trail. So I'm wondering what the point is of constraining ourselves unnecessarily. So there are a few other things that I think probably could be in here, but and then there are other, these all are references to Municipal Act, but there are also Planning Act notice things that we have discussed before in this council, and maybe we should put those there. And a final comment, I mean, just for your consideration, I think one of the things that we should put there, that we should contemplate, is how we will, what other methods of notification we will be giving when we have our new website and social media and other things up and running. Because right now, and this proposed bylaw reflects this, there are basically two methods of notice. One is we put it on the municipal website, and the other is we provide notice, which is actually on the bulletin board, and we post the notice at the municipal office, which is inside the municipal office. And I think that would miss a lot of people. We talked a little bit about the sign. We have folks who pick up information about what's going on from that sign. And of course, we can't put everything on the sign, but at least as they're driving by, and we even in the summertime have a sign over at the Schwanaga River and the Bunny Trail, right? So it's an attempt to remind people that there is a council meeting, or there's this, that, the other thing. But hopefully in the future we'll have some other more effective ways of getting things. People will be able to follow us on Twitter or on Facebook, or subscribe to an email notification about specific things that they want to know, and it'll come automatically out of our website, out of our system to them. And that's probably is equally as important as these things, but I mean, those are just things that we could add. We could say this is how we're going to notify. But anyway, I'm done talking about this. If you are there other comments or thoughts about it, or Councilor McKeon?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I hear you loud and clear, and I think there's a bit of a miscommunication with it, or to some people, around maybe their Planning Act item. We expected their notifications through the Planning Act, and the Planning Act only gives a certain parameter to notify people. I think a linkage somehow between our bylaw of public notice connected with the planning, as we were criticized pretty heavy in the last year or so over a couple of locations because people felt they're very upset really that they didn't get notified. Well, maybe justly, they didn't really have to be notified if you look at some of the Planning Act information.
Well, legally they didn't.
So,
that's
yeah,
right.
legally. But then on, in some locations, there is a real active cottage association, road association. So if one or two people know, then the whole group know. I know one place right behind us here, there are people upset because they didn't know what was happening in the Narrows and such. So I think that's a missing link between the Planning Act, doing their due diligence actually, and maybe notifying road associations, cottage associations, just as a couple examples. Could be inland as well, as we determined down the road. People are upset because things were happening and they hadn't been notified. So I think we probably have some time to, and opportune time, but this draft is in front of us right now to just do some linkage between planning and the public notice for other items.
Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, and everything everyone has said is wonderful and right. Rightly or wrongly, or fortunately or unfortunately, the makeup of our community makes the communication issue difficult. When you've got the majority of people who come in and out, are here and aren't here, and live other places. So I'm really looking forward to some of the recommendations that Molly may have on that communication element to see how we can better do it. And I think the making up of an internet sort of email list where people can just have something sent to them and they can read it or not read it or whatever, but it shows up in their inbox is an excellent thing. The other thing I've been thinking about is, when we say the roads associations, and I know there's a couple of things that John Jackson is supposedly getting to the roads associations for comment this summer and things like that. I think we have another avenue to go because particularly on the private roads, you've got a road grant protocol where, 80% of the roads, someone on that road writes an application to get the money. And they're supposed to have over 50% of the people on the road in agreement with that. So I don't know how we can formalize that, but those people are the ones that probably could get a hold of the people on their road if they got the information, but I don't think we count them right now as road associations, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's an untapped resource there somehow. The other things that we used to always put was, and what we used to do, maybe it's outdated now, is we used to post a lot of stuff on the landfill sites, right? Everybody kind of goes to a landfill site at some point, and I think it kind of got dropped off here somehow, and maybe today's world it's not a legitimate thing to do because you've got to get someone to get them to the landfill sites and things like that. But do we still have the agendas, for instance, go up to the landfill sites? Do they? Okay. But I think we can use maybe a board or two at the landfill sites that might have a glass in front of them so that anything we're doing can be posted there, and particularly not necessarily during the winter, but during a lot of the year, people might wander over to the board and say, oh, I didn't know that or that or that. So I think there's communication things that we can do. And in terms of the timing of how long, I don't know. To me, unless there's a great rush, you give at least 21 days or a month or something. I don't like anything that sort of is 2 weeks or, gets posted on a Thursday and we pass it on a Monday. That's not good communication. So those are just but everyone else's comments are spot on.
Councillor Gore Matthews.
So I'm just curious, the items that, like some of these say published in the newspaper, do we recover the cost of publishing notices in the newspaper if it's related to like a private road with the person that's applying for the name change? Do they pay for that advertisement? So that's not our expense?
The answer is yes,
Okay.
they do.
Yeah, just, a lot of people are moving away from advertising in the newspaper. First off, it's super expensive, and as well, not many people are reading the newspaper, or including including the seasonal residents, wouldn't catch those notices. So I'm not sure how effective using the newspaper is anymore.
If I may,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, in the research that we've done with other municipalities, you're absolutely correct. They're moving away from the use of the newspaper, and some municipalities say at the discretion of the clerk. And it would depend on what you're advertising for. If it's the sale of a piece of property, issue a road allowance or something like that, it makes sense that it's in the newspaper. But there are other things that it's just an extra added expense to the municipality that nobody takes notice of.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor? Down under general on the first page of our draft bylaw, number 2B, public notice utilizing the municipality of Whitestone website shall be sufficient even if the website is not accessible at all times during the public notice posting period. Is that correct? Could you explain that?
If I may, this was borrowed from another municipality through our research. So if your website goes down for, a couple of hours for technical reasons, that's the reason that is in there, so that if the notice period, if your website went down for days and days during that.
Well, that's what I was wondering. It's not
Yeah.
specific time-wise,
Right.
time frame connected to it. So I wondered.
That was the
But
intent
but
of that
it
statement.
isn't suggesting that it is sufficient to only use the website.
Right.
It's saying that if your website goes down, that doesn't mean that you've failed to follow the bylaw, right? But it's not a suggestion that the website is all you need to do is post it on your website, and that's sufficient. Even if the website goes down, it's only if we said posting on the website was a requirement. It just prevents somebody from coming back and saying, well, your website went down, and so when I looked at it, I couldn't access it, so I didn't see the notice, right? They can't use that as to claim that we violated our policy in the bylaw.
I guess the first part of it, Mr. Mayor, is what I was looking at more than anything. A public notice utilizing the municipality Whitestone website shall be sufficient. I don't know, it's kind of in there by itself as being the website as being
Yeah, I know.
the communication tool. I think communications have to be maybe looked at a little bit.
Well, there are some other issues too, and if you look at Clause G, and I don't want to get into but it's not, it isn't quite right. I mean, the question is, people used to do this all the time. They used to say, if I send you a letter and you got 6 days to get it, and after 6 days you are deemed to have received it. Well, guess what? Lots of people don't. Like an ordinary, I'm not talking about a registered letter, something you have to sign, proof of delivery, nothing. Just, we put it in the mail, you got it after 6 days. That's not legally defensible, obviously. But you will still see it all the time in notice clauses in agreements. So, there are all kinds of reasons. The internet is not, like email is not 100% reliable, and lots of reasons why you could miss something. And I think, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out how can we make sure that we get things, get information out to people, get notices to them that as many as possible will actually see. But we're not going to be, at the end of the day, you can't be held to account for things that didn't work. You could say, well, we're going to post it on a big sign that on the road there that everybody drives by. Well, that still doesn't mean that people are looking at the sign, right? Some of them will drive by it every day for the week and never look at to see what's on it. So we can't be held accountable for people not getting the information. All we can do is try to get it to them as conveniently as possible. Anyway, are there any other, is there any other feedback? Yes.
Just a quick one. The notice boards at the dump, I think, is a good idea. Because like Councillor Lamb was saying, at some point, everybody goes to the dump. There's a lot of people that go there just to talk to the attendants, see if they know what's going on, and if we have a board that don't post anything like that, I think it'll help.
Yeah, I'm glad that point actually came up because I think that's something we should capture and not, you know, I'm a big one for doing as many things electronically as you can, but if you, notice board, I consider that notice boards are still important here.
I think we should put a notice board at the LCBO, you'd catch everyone.
Well, there's the thought.
Yeah, there is, okay.
Okay, so is there anything else about this, or can we call the question? This was just that we receive it for information, okay? All in favor? And thank you for your feedback. I'm sure the clerk and staff appreciate it all, or not.
No, I do, thank you.
You do. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now we're getting to some more. Sorry, I am just looking for the second half of my agenda to make sure that. Oh well, I set something on top of it. There it is. Under business matters, we have a number of things here. So the first one, landfill operations and proposed task force terms of reference is 15.1. And this is an attempt to tidy up, if I can use that terms, what we were left with as of the discussion at the last meeting, the lengthy discussion we had, and it was a good discussion, but I think what we discovered was that, you know, there is some complexity around some of these issues, in fact, enough complexity that we can't probably solve them on the floor of a council meeting. We have to create a mechanism to deal with them offline. So in this particular motion, we have two things. I'm going to read it to you, but we're basically doing a couple things. First of all, we're capturing or getting clarity around what we said at the last meeting, because there was a fair bit of confusion, as you saw when it went to get written up. And then the second thing that we're suggesting is that council create a landfill task force to work on some additional items. So I'll read the motion, and then we'll try and get a mover and seconder, and if we do that, then we can have some discussion, and maybe we can fill in some blanks here or take some things out. So the first part is this: that council hereby endorses implementation of the following changes at Municipality of Whitestone landfill sites effective May 1st, 2020. 1. Eliminate the acceptance of tires. And by the way, these things were you saw a draft newsletter. These things are in the newsletter because we felt that there was strong consensus. So number 1, eliminate the acceptance of tires. 2, implement a revenue protocol for scrap metal. 3, receive brush at the Alls Road site only, and no brush from commercial enterprises. 4, eliminate the acceptance of all commercial construction and demolition waste, including shingles. And 5, eliminate the acceptance of boats other than metal hull boats that have been completely stripped of non-metallic components and liquids. So those were 5 things that I think we did agree to out of that original table that we were discussing. The next part, and that council directs staff to undertake an education and communication plan for the above referenced changes. Which is, I say, has kind of already started, but obviously more needs to be done. Part 3, that council create a landfill task force as per the attached terms of reference for the purpose of researching and recommending operational improvements at the landfill sites, including but not limited to recommendations made in report PW 2019-12, entitled Waste Management and Landfill Operations, a discussion on current operations and options for improvements. And that is the report that you saw at the last meeting that we discussed. To report back to council with recommendations and implementation timelines by a particular date, which is we will have to fill in. And that the following be appointed to the landfill task force. The suggestion was a couple of councillors, our roads and facilities superintendent Brian Sheridan, and possibly there might be 1 or 2 other people that you would think of. So we need to fill those in. And further, and finally, that resolution 2020-09 dated January 21st, 2020 is hereby rescinded. So that would effectively unwind the thing that we did at the last meeting and replace it with the clarified part in the first. Okay, so essentially what we're doing in a nutshell is, what this is doing is it's taking the things that I think everybody hopefully will agree we were in agreement on at the last meeting, and take away the other things that we sort of tried to add during the meeting, take them out and assign them to a task force to do some more work on, and some of the other things that were on, you know, in the big table that Brian provided. So that is the motion in front of you. Can I get a mover and seconder, and then we can talk about it? Moved by Councillor Lamb. Seconded by Councillor Woods. The floor is yours.
Can I fill in the blanks?
By all means.
Is that,
There are 3 blanks, by the way. There's the names for the task force, and there's the when do you think they should report back by?
well, I think in terms of, I think the committee is above what it should be. I think Councillor McEwen has expressed some good ideas and a genuine interest in this, so I would like to suggest that he be a person on the task force. I don't think I should fill in all the blanks.
Okay.
I don't know who else might
Are
be
you agreeable to having your name put there, Councillor McEwen? Thank you.
You're welcome.
My pen is on the paper.
Just having a senior's moment here. It's no small task, of course, and we'll certainly appreciate council's input and certainly support. One concern I have is that our superintendent will be retiring in somewhat near future, and I hope we can get some continuity through her. I don't know what the timing is on this and how quick we hope to get more process in place and changes in place. Maybe it's fairly quickly, maybe it's not. Maybe some things can go soon, some will have to be brought in progressively. I would be willing to take on one role.
So I want to ask then, is there another, thank you, Councillor McEwen, is there another councillor who would really like to do this?
I'll keep filling in the blanks. Councillor Gore Matthews as the second name. And only because I just asked her, she said it, I think I'd be okay with that.
I don't mind, I don't know, I think Councilor Woods has a lot of background on the landfills as well. It seems to be an area that he has a lot of interest in,
Well,
so.
I'll suggest the third name. Oh, no, you can't do that because then technically it's, I don't know whether this still holds, but I've been always told you put 3 councilors in a room in a meeting, it's a council meeting. So I put to the clerk, is that still true?
You'll have
So
quorum.
that's one
You'll
of,
have
that's one of
quorum.
the issues, so.
Council
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, it is,
You'll have quorum.
So it doesn't matter to me. I respect both of you, so I asked over here first. But anyway, it doesn't matter to me. But I think just on the work to be done, as Councilor McKeon was saying, I think we've taken a giant step forward with the 4 or 5 things that we've done. And I think we've done it responsibly, and I think people will accept it, that we haven't overreached, okay? I think the big next one is obviously the recycle thing and the clear plastic bags and it not being mandatory because we can't force it and all that kind of thing. But I don't think that's as big to tackle now that we have the information, that we know we can't, you know, go find people who don't comply and things like that. I think that can be tackled with notice, and I think 90% of people will start using plastic bags. And then the other things you can do next year. Next year you roll in some more things. So I don't see this as enormous, but maybe I'm not seeing it right. So.
Well-
I don't know, you guys.
well, I don't know how to settle this, we could have a coin toss or something, but I was going to say that Councillor Woods is not on any committees right now, and Councillor Gorham Matthews has a few other ones, and so I wonder if that's, is that,
I'm going to suggest we put in Councillor Woods because I'm filling in the blanks here.
all right, I'm making notes as you're speaking. Now, what about, well, I'm always a little nervous about these things, timelines, but
May 1st.
when should we expect to hear back from this? Realistically, you know, you have to, you know, get together and look at the other items and talk them through a bit. And everybody has time constraints, so including Byron Sheridan. So, what I heard a suggestion. Was it May?
Well, either May 1st is what I was thinking of, but then it's got to come to council, and then it's going to so you're going to be, you know, June sometimes. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. I just see a couple of meetings, right? But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the tabulation of information is sort of like from neighbors, and coming up with signage. I think we should have a brochure of some kind, maybe a flyer, of some description to go to people once we've established that these are the changes in total. I was hoping, as council knows, that we would have put a bit more information in the newsletter or got more specific right front end here. I don't know when the next mail out sort of thing to notify. We have to notify everyone of the changes when changes are imminent. Is there a May newsletter? So there's a May prior to June, July not. So May 1st we should shoot for, I guess. February, March, April, May. Oh my God. May 1st is like here. February, March, April, May.
If I may,
Go ahead.
just in terms of timing, Councillor, our May newsletter would typically go out the 3rd week of May.
3rd week of May.
And it's a
Okay.
standalone newsletter. The one that's going out shortly is connected with the tax notice, but the May is standalone.
Yeah.
But just from a perspective, by May 1st, we would be close to wrapping up the newsletter. Because it's a week for printing, a week for stuffing envelopes, and then, you know, we always leave a little bit of wiggle room. So there's, just in terms of timing, I just wanted to give you a sense of how the newsletter would go out. And it's not that we couldn't push it off to the last week of May, but you want to balance that between council meetings and approval and, just designing the newsletter for that information. And then if it's in the newsletter, is there something going to be implemented in the future or immediately? I just wanted to give you some perspective on timing.
So we should know where we're at pretty well by May 1st, I guess. We will have a scribe or a secretarial support on this, as I had read. Someone from the office. Is that person determined yet, or is that to be determined?
I think it's to be determined. I'm leaning towards Judy, but I haven't spoken to Judy yet. And we'll just have to look at people's availability and that kind of thing. So you will certainly have some clerical assistance to write up notes and give you some perspective on. I don't think they'd be there to do all your research for you and gather information, but they can certainly pull the meetings together for you.
So will I put May 1st? Is that not too pressing for you? All right. By May 1st, 2020. Okay, any other comments about this motion? We filled in the blanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
I did leave a estimated completion in terms of appointments, but we might want to say to be determined because there may be some work after May 1st.
Oh, yeah, this is only, the motion is only
Right.
when I didn't think this was a final report. This was when we would get back and have some additional items to discuss. And I guess what I would, maybe I'm out of line here, but I guess I would suggest to you that likely what will happen is you will come back with a couple of things that you think make sense to do, in the next, in the balance of this year, and maybe get people moving in certain directions, but you will still have other outstanding items that you want to talk about maybe on into the summer or the fall or something, and some others that won't happen until 2021 or something, So, I'm not suggesting that the task force has stood down then, and as soon as you report, there's probably going to be more work. But okay, do you want me to read this again, or are you good with it? Can you remember what it all said?
You don't have to read it.
Don't have to read it. Okay.
Copy.
You got copies, so you could fill in the information. And so the members of the task force that are appointed are Joe McEwen and Brian Woods, and May 1st is the deadline. Are there? I'm sorry. I did make a comment earlier. Are there any other people in the community that you think should be involved in this, or is that small task force sufficient? Not trying to make things more complicated.
You will.
That's what it would do.
That's exactly what it'll
I'm sure there are
do.
people that have expertise and opinions on this, but I think, if you start involving a lot of different people in it, it'll take forever to make any decisions.
Well, the task force can always consult with people that it wants to, or it can always float ideas for discussion with people. I think that's...
The one group that came to mind was the Whitestone Conservation Association, because they seem to
Yeah.
focus on the landfills. That's been part of their mandate before, was landfills. So there may be somebody that you'd want to touch base with from that
Okay.
group.
All right, well, thank you. I'll call the question then. Those in favor of this motion, please indicate. It is carried. Thank you. We're making progress on this. For which I'm grateful. All right. Let's see where we are. The next one was a memo regarding updated fees and charges.
Well, cemetery.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 15.2, I'm getting ahead of myself. The cemetery bylaw. You know what, I'm going to ask the clerk to just fill you in on the process that we're following, because we're actually in the middle of a process, and I want to make sure people understand. This was not, this is not for us to approve at this stage. It goes out to another external authority to look at, after which they will send it back to us to pass, right? But then we don't want to, at that point in time, we don't want to make amendments. So this is kind of the last opportunity for council to look at this and see if you think it's okay to go forward, because assuming that it isn't modified by the bereavement authority, it's going to come back to us, and then at that point in time, if we change it, we start the whole process over again, and that'll get everybody in a flap. So, did I capture that properly, or?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said exactly what I was going to say. If I may, council has seen this previously. The one thing I do want to say is that the library board, I've got the library board on my mind, the cemetery board has worked long and hard to update this bylaw, and it has been in front of the bereavement authority in the past. So we sent them the original first draft to say, how does it look? Is this something that you would be willing to approve? Because we didn't want to go through a lengthy process, coming to council, coming back. The reason the bylaw is so long and it sounds wordy and complicated is because of the bereavement authority. And for instance, the mayor had suggested section C was not written in a manner, and I don't disagree with him, that is easily understood. I went back and asked staff how we ended up with that section, and in fact, it wasn't in our original bylaw. The bereavement authority came back and asked us to put this in as you see it, and it's in other cemetery bylaws. Now, that doesn't mean we can't tweak it a little bit to really say the same thing, so it's clear. The cancellation, the cooling off period, the before 30 days and the after 30 days. But generally speaking, the bereavement authority has given their nod to this, as has the cemetery board. So it's been through a good number of iterations, and this, as the mayor said, is the last kick at the cat for council, because once it does go to the bereavement authority and they give us approval, then it really just comes back to council to pass as a bylaw. And that doesn't mean you can't change your mind, but then there's a whole process of notification and signs and such. So hopefully that was clear. And the one thing of note, and it may have been brought up previously, is that the cemetery board is looking at implementing some scattering grounds, and that is a place to scatter ashes if you so wish. And that's not currently in the bylaw, and in fact, that location has not even been established in any of the cemeteries. But once we know that the bylaw is in the process in the spring, that work will be done on the scattering ground locations.
I wonder if the thing that councillors might really want to take a look at is the so-called rules that are associated, and if you look at them, you'll see they talk about what you can put on a cemetery plot by way of markings, and the fact that they have to be removed by a certain date, or the cemetery board has the authority to remove them without notice, and things of this sort. Knowing that that's been an issue in the past, I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of those things and they make sense. And they make sense to me. I'm not questioning them, but just wanted to give you an opportunity in case you thought the public might have issues with them afterwards. No? So, basically then, the motion in front of you is that Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives the memorandum updated cemetery management bylaw for information, and that Council recommends the bylaw. It says the following amendments, but without amendments to the recommends that it be forwarded to the bereavement authority for approval. So that's where we're. That's the motion. Can I get a mover and seconder?
I'll move.
Councillor Gorman Matthews. Sorry, should beat you, Councillor McEwen. I'll take you as a seconder. So that council recommends the bylaw for the bereavement for approval. Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. We have a next step in our cemetery bylaw process. So, the next item is our fees and charges schedules, which that's a draft bylaw that we've seen before in various pieces, and I suppose in a nutshell the question that is being asked of you is, do you think it's at the stage where we can bring it forward to a public meeting? And if not, do you have suggestions for things that you want to change? So I'll just open it up for discussion at this point, and then we'll. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, on just a couple of question and a comment. Where it says boats, and maybe I got it wrong, but it says current is $1.25 a foot, and then it says proposed is $2 in Schedule B under landfill rates and fees. We're just not going to accept boats, let alone $2. Oh, it's $2 a foot if it's a metal boat? Is that what you're thinking?
But I guess if we're going to sell the material as part of a revenue stream, why wouldn't we just say, please bring us your aluminum boats?
I would.
Am I wrong?
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
Or leave it at $1.25, but just we only take metal boats or whatever. Okay, I get it now. I was thinking that that was a mistake, but I guess it isn't. I don't care whether it's $1.25 or $2 or nothing.
Yes.
On Schedule B, until we've looked at the landfill through our committee, I don't think we can go beyond where it's saying to be determined, right to the bottom of that page. Well, the blue boxes, that's different. Landfill permits free. Tires.
Boats we've done.
But the landfill portion of that Schedule B, I don't think we can accept. Half-ton truck or trailer, furniture and appliances. There's another thing that we really haven't come to grips with. We've never discussed whether they could be dropped off at one place and taken to another, or binned up at both places, or there's things like that. So I don't think we could deal with Schedule B unless we just leave it in the present format, but then we have to change the bylaw again, right? If we accept the bylaw.
What says items with free on is $10 now. Now it says it's going to be actual costs. What does actual costs mean in that context?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So I'm not sure the current procedure, I don't think it's quite correct, but there's a cost to have someone come in and drain the Freon out and certify that the refrigerator or the unit is Freon free, and then it can be moved safely.
Oh, I see.
So the cost that someone charges you could vary, and of course the cost will go up yearly for travel and that kind of thing.
Okay. I also had a question on Schedule D. I was glad to see road damage deposit and the details to be worked out. This is, I think, what I was talking about, if you're putting a new cottage in and your contractor wrecks the heck out of the road, but okay, that's good, I'm glad to see that in. Most of the rest of the ones I thought, other than Councilor McEwen's comment about the landfill side, I don't know how you deal with that one, but I thought they were. And then also on Schedule J, for, I must have been picky this afternoon, Farley Road additional guest parking, Farley spelled wrong. But other than that, I thought we were pretty close to where we want to be. I guess the academic, and I'll ask the question, but I guess it's pretty hard to determine. If we had all these things in effect last year, what would the revenue stream look like, right? But it's too difficult to determine because you got metal and you got all kinds of stuff. But hopefully, at the end of the day, our revenue stream will go up with all this, right? That's part of the objective.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yes, the idea was to keep our eye on the fee schedule. As you notice, some of them haven't changed. The fee schedules haven't been looked at since 2015, and something else I brought forward to council is there's all sorts of fees that are embedded in other bylaws and policies, and we're trying to bring these together. In some case, repeal them, and in some case, redo the bylaw. In terms of Schedule B, which is the landfill, and I do agree that creates some challenges. We can do one of two things. We can leave it as is and amend the consolidated fee bylaw at a later date once a decision is made, or you can simply sit on the fees bylaw. It's been some time since it's been looked at, and there's clearly no rush. We're just moving it through the process as we get things done, and wait until such time as decisions are made about landfill operational issues and fees, and then we can bring it back to council with the appropriate notice. And, I see that as being, if the landfill discussions will come back to council in early May, you could see this back in June, and then simply pass the fees. And you could do such things as, there may be situations, especially with Farley Road, for instance, where those purchases have already been made, so it won't be implemented until 2021. So a couple of options.
Throwing revenue out the window if the longer you wait, right?
That's correct.
Councillor Woods.
Just a question, the Schedule D, the building department rates and fees. This is for all buildings, excluding something that's less than 108 square feet, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
That's
yes.
correct, yeah.
I just wanted to double check that.
I'm curious about, since we're on that particular schedule, 2/3 of the way down, building without a permit, and then it says, description, at the chief building official's discretion, and then there's no current fee, but it says fees double. So if the current fee is, what is the current fine or fee? I realize it's at it's often discretionary as to whether something gets charged, but I don't think it's discretionary as to how much get charged. If you charge it,
The intent, if I may, Mr. Mayor, the intent from the building official, CBO, was the normal fees that would have been charged would be doubled for building without a building permit, without a permit.
Oh, I see what you mean. All right.
And I'm
So, okay,
seeing that
double
could
what
be
is doubled.
described better, yeah.
What would... It's what would have been charged for the permit, right?
Right.
What would... All right, now I understand.
Could I speak to an item on Schedule D?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. In regards to the road damage deposit, this is something that Councillor Lamb brought to our attention and was important to him. Our CBO looked around. There is one municipality only that we could find that actually does this, and that is our neighbors next door in McKellar. They charge $750, and they also have a policy. Some municipalities we found have been thinking about it, and they're trying to differentiate between roads that, where significant damage would occur and where it may not occur. For instance, hardtop roads where there's excessive turning movements are definitely a possibility. If it's a low-volume gravel road and the only repairs and maintenance that might be needed after significant trucks come and go is a grading, then one might want to consider whether that should be part of a damage deposit. So we don't have a policy at this point, and we'll be putting something together if this is the direction that council wishes to go in.
Well, I can tell you, I brought it up because where I live is a tar and chip road, and that's where I've seen the damage, okay? People going in and building off of Canning, for instance, and they literally destroy the entrance, you know. And I've seen it several times. And I knew McKellar had one. I didn't know others didn't have one. So, you know, you don't want to nickel and dime people, but sometimes people get pretty careless with what they do. And I've also seen it on private and unassumed roads where they just, because they're not up to the same standard, and they just wreck the heck out of the road, right? By the time that truck leaves or that cottage is built, they've got ruts that are 3 feet deep, you know, and these big trucks going in there don't give a hoot. And, you know, the responsible people sometimes say, great, here's $1,000 and go grade it and whatever, but others just say, tough luck, right? So I don't think there's anything we can do on private or unassumed roads. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
So this would just be on our assumed roads. Well, if people are doing damage, and you usually know, then I think we should be charging. Like, look at what Bell did over on Canning Road. I mean, did a lot of damage on that road, putting that tower in, right?
Did we ever get anything out of them?
We were supposed to. I don't know where. That's sort of fallen off the table or something. I don't know what's happened with that.
Brian's working on it, and he's given them a price, and they're balking at the cost. They're not balking at paying. We expect to get money from them. The other thing that would be included in here is sometimes what you see is not necessarily road damage, but an entrance, an existing culvert that's damaged because of the, you know, turning movements.
Yeah.
So that would be built into the policy that if council has an interest, that we would build.
Well, I just think if someone's building on an assumed road, that there's, I don't care whether it's $1,000 or $500, it's a damage, and I'd call it a damage deposit. I think it would do $10,000 worth of damage to our road, really elevating the cost. We're not going to say thanks for your $500. The taxpayer's on the hook for $9,500. I call it a damage deposit.
Yeah.
And it exists all over the place. You go to a condo building, you don't get to do everything without having a damage deposit, right? I just think, you know, is this a hill that I'm going to die on? No, but I think on our unassumed roads that we should have some policy established for it. I can imagine it would go on other roads too. So.
Okay, so, oh, sorry, yes, we can.
Just a comment on that. It's difficult to pick off the one-off beer trucks and Home Depot trucks and specific trucks, and then the one that was brought to my attention too were the tankers, like oil trucks, propane trucks. Like some of those pretty big honkers, and they go in as soon as they can get in the spring and late in the fall and in the winter. It's kind of a tricky one to monitor on those little individuals, one-offs, but if it is a project-related job site, that's Council Lamb, I believe that's what you're referring to, like a whole new cottage.
That's what I'm talking about, or a demolition of a cottage.
Yeah, a new complete revamp on a property, so there's going to be heavy trucking and traffic.
Exactly. And that's
And
what I'm getting
when they come for the building permit, at least, maybe we can have that addressed as a...
That's when I'd have it charged, you're saying, as part of your building, sort of like an entrance permit, right? For a driveway. You're building a cottage, you got to take care that you don't damage our roads. Here's $500 or whatever it is, and it's refundable to you should you do no damage, to the road. If there isn't, you're in whatever damage you do, you're responsible. That you obviously have an onus to kind of prove it if you can, right? But usually it's a contractor who's going in.
Maybe our bylaw could include a effective charge for damages incurred or something of that nature. Like we don't know there's damage till after the fact. Somebody buys a property, next thing we know it's being cleared and is trucked and they're gone. At least we could go back on the property owner or somebody, but it's now you get into legal stuff.
Most property owners will go back on their contractor. You get a $500 bill for a road repair, you take it off your costs. Anyway.
So other comments about this? Yes.
My only comment was with regards to Schedule A. We had discussed last year about nonprofit organizations, and we learned that the Agricultural Society would have use of the community center for their events at no charge. But I thought we had a discussion at the time that all groups would have free use of the community center. Like, I'm just thinking of the Rod and Gun Club coming up. Didn't we not have that discussion?
We did.
I didn't know if I was imagining it. I knew we had a discussion, but I didn't know if we actually passed a thing that said that.
So this maybe doesn't reflect that quite. It does talk about the Ag Society under the note.
It does, but then it says there will be a 50% subsidy for nonprofit organizations. I thought we had done away with that and said that.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
I'm virtually certain that's the case.
Thank you. So if I may, Mr. Mayor, so it should read all nonprofit associations based within the municipality. There should be no charge. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I think that's what
I thought that's what we decided.
Well,
I can't remember when we decided it at a meeting when we were talking about this earlier
I don't
on.
think we decided anything. I thought there was a committee that was meeting and discussing it. I don't think that ever came to us to where we said that firmly. And I can remember having discussions on that, but I don't think this ever came back to us. And I guess the concern that I have is we have real costs at the community hall, okay? We have costs of cleaning, we have, and I guess some people feel, well, what the heck, and maybe rightfully so, that we should be able to use it for free, but the actual fact is that there are real costs. And if you start saying any nonprofit group can use it, there's all kinds of nonprofit groups, every road association. You can say, hey, I'm going to have my general meeting here, I'm going to have a party on Saturday night for all the people in the neighborhood, and I'm a nonprofit organization, I'm just having a party, right? And you're going to say, great, come on in, you're nonprofit. What's profit? I think if you're trying to address the Rod and Gun Club, we've given people, under our donation policy, lots of things. If we want to say, if you have a breakfast here, you don't pay for it, or other places. But the more you expand this, you don't get much revenue anyway. I just don't like the term nonprofit group. That's just about any group is the Legion profit? I don't think they're for profit. They could start having everything here, right? For free. Maybe they do now, I don't know. But I just think it opens it up to everything.
Wow.
It opens up to any damage, or they go into the kitchen and use it, and we clean up. And to me, that's just too wide open. And those are just my feelings.
Well, I wonder, sorry, Councillor Lamb, I wonder if it's covered under municipally sponsored events, you see, because we were sponsoring indirectly the Ag Society. We were sponsoring them with this hand and taking money from and the same with the Rod and Gun, right?
Yeah.
We gave them a donation for the fish derby, right? So, but they want to have the meeting in here where they award the prizes for the fish derby, so I don't know, you could pay for the hall, right? That was when the discussion, that's the discussion I remember. But that would be covered under municipally sponsored events, so perhaps we don't need to, maybe we don't need to amend what's there, maybe it's already covered. I guess I would ask the clerk, was it not your understanding that those groups of that sort were, like, you know, I think if it's a group that the municipality isn't sponsoring, they may be not for profit and they may be, but if the municipality's not sponsoring them, then maybe we don't just say, oh, everybody should come and have their meeting here in the community center, because obviously that is going to create additional demand. But we don't, all these other activities that we run in here, like Walk Fit and that sort of thing, we don't exactly, well, I mean, it's treated as we don't charge them for the use of the hall, right? And I don't think we should charge them for the use of the hall. Even though the money that comes to run it is actually coming from DSAB or from CSS, we still let them use the hall, right? And it'll cost us a lot of money because they don't make a lot of mess. They just come in, they don't set up tables and stuff like that. They just come in, do their thing, and they leave, right?
What's the definition of the church that came in here? I'm a non-profit organization. I wanted every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock to have, which they were doing. I don't know whether they still do it or not.
Yeah, but they pay money.
No, I realize, but under this, they could say, I'm a non-profit organization. I don't
Well,
need money.
well, that's. I'm sorry. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I
I'm
know,
saying
but-
let's not amend this
Yeah.
and get it and open the, because I think we would be in trouble if we started sponsoring.
I do too.
You know, groups like that. They'd say, well, wait a minute, I don't. It's not my church. How come they get to use it for free? And
Are they in the 50% subsidy range, this church that comes in Sunday?
I have no idea.
Or they just get the key and use it?
If I may, they do pay. I believe they pay the half-day rate
The $62.50?
at $62.50. So it's not a 50% subsidy. They pay,
For a half day.
I'm pretty sure they pay a half-day. I'd have to double check. One of the things that has come to our attention is the Diners Club. They actually pay, not CSS. They pay here in this municipality, but they don't pay in other municipalities. And so by a municipally sponsored event would probably, now that I look at this, for the sake of staff who are taking the bookings, they would need some clarification. They would need to understand with confidence which organizations are exempt from the fees and which aren't. And maybe we need to do a little bit of work on this. I mean, it does come back to council, but some
It
clarification.
also says at the bottom, exemptions and or reduction of fees may be at the discretion of the CAO clerk. So you have that discretion to run doing something or whatever. I just don't like opening it up.
I would only use that discretion very carefully. I used it last year when, or it was the year before our Thanksgiving dinner when there was a loss of water.
Yeah.
And so we gave a very desirable rate to the church for that.
I actually think we're talking all the same thing here. It's
Yeah.
Just the.
yeah, it is just getting clarity, because what happens, you know, if you don't have a clear policy, what happens is somebody gets charged something, they come in, they say, I want to do this, say, yep, $250, and then they discover that somebody else who's really in the same category that they're in got it for free. Isn't balanced. Well, we're not paying anything for the church, or for the hall. Why do church? And so we have to, we got to make it so that it's. I guess I'm not really. I mean, I think the discretion is intended for extenuating circumstances, not for deviating from the policy. I like these people, so I'll let them use it for free, right? You know, it's got to be something that everybody is clear on the interpretation of it.
I think the intention when we had the conversation before, it wasn't so people could have meetings here, it was to encourage events.
Yeah.
So that people don't incur that additional cost. If you're trying to bring events into the community, we want to encourage things for people to do and not have an additional charge for these groups. So it'd be like the Diners Club. I've heard that complaint from them before, but, you know, it's, nobody else is charging them to use the facilities, and they're here as a social network for the seniors in the community. I think that if we can find a way to do that under a municipally sponsored event.
And at the end of the day, they're funded by DSAP, really.
Yeah, there.
Which we put money into. We get an assessment. So, anyway, look, I think where we're at, folks, if I may, I don't think we're ready to approve this. I think we made some progress, but we're not quite ready to call a public meeting. Is that the consensus of the group?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think Schedule B certainly has to be totally looked at.
Yeah.
Before we can move it forward. And I concur with Trustee Ron Matthews on the Schedule A there. And it seems to me we had cumulative accumulation of the money that was brought in from the different organizations, and we're not looking at very much money, right? A couple $1,000, and I think we're reducing it by $1,000, taking out the Egg Society. Like, there are not a lot of organizations who donate much in rental fees. Certainly anything recreation related or library related, they don't get charged for it either. So I don't think we're looking at a whole lot of money by making changes there. The 50% subsidy for nonprofit, that is a little bit, I think, confusing.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
The original discussion we had on facility rentals was when Mayor Armstrong was still alive. So I'm going to look back in my notes, which I recall I took many, and I'll revisit the facility rentals and try to bring some clarity to the details below, and I'll bring that back to another council meeting in the near future. And other than that, I think what I'm hearing is we'll put all the fee schedules on hold until such time as the landfill rates have been sorted through, and then hopefully we can have one consolidated fees bylaw, maybe mid-year, and if that's council's desire.
Thank you. Okay, so having discussed this at great length, can I get a mover and seconder that council hereby receives the memorandum, fees and charges, draft updated schedules and bylaw for information?
I'll move it.
And moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor McEwen. All in favor? Are we at curfew?
We're past curfew.
Madam Clerk? Why, when was it?
8:30.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, an hour in closed.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get out ahead of curfew. I'm advised by the clerk that we need a curfew motion, that council hereby continues its meeting past the allotted time of 3.5 hours and continuing for additional 1/2 hour, and hopefully it won't take us that long. Mover, Councillor Gorman Matthews, seconded by Councillor Woods. All those in favor? Well, we're almost, but we've got 2 more items.
We're done in time now.
Oh. Well, that's because we started at 4:30. 15.4 is CNO project and FedNor application, and our clerk is going to give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be extremely brief in that the CNO project, which is the Community Investment Initiative for Northern Ontario, which really is our AcDev committee. We lost our economic development officer. He was living in Ottawa and he was having trouble finding housing here, so he resigned. His contract ended in March anyway. The project itself was funded by FedNor, and that funding ends at the end of April, and the committee has applied for FedNor funding for another 3 years. We have phase 1 approved and we're working on phase 2. And what I don't have to share with council at this point is what the cost may be for this municipality, because we have additional partners, including CB&DC and McKellar, that weren't there previously. So I just wanted to know generally what's happening with CINO, and I'll have more information at another council meeting.
Good, thank you.
I'm sorry, I had a question and I'm looking for it. It was in the correspondence. There was item H is a letter from the Parry Sound Area Community Business and Development Center annual report and request for funding. How does this, I really get confused sometimes. Who's on first, who's doing what in terms of economic development? And I understand what happened with CINO and Glenbarndon, but how are these people related to, or are they?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, yes. The CB&DC letter of request here in their annual report is related strictly to the work that they're doing in community business development. And part of that business development is linked to the economic development officer of the District of West Parry Sound. So they're asking for some funding, and you'll see that as part of the report that's coming in March with all of the funding requests for donations. And this letter is really just telling you that they're asking for funding, and it's sharing with you their annual report. In the past, they have not been part of the steering committee for the economic development. They have offered some funding to be a member at the table. The area CAOs have not decided whether we would recommend that to councils or not, but there is a link. The other reason there's a link is that the economic development officer is housed at CB&DC. That's where they live, that's where they're given an office, and there's costs associated with that. So hopefully that was, there's definitely some overlap, and we're trying to sort out what that should look like in the future by somewhat extracting the economic development officer from CB&DC and them giving that person guidance and direction. More to come when I bring back the CINO.
All right, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
when you bring it back, so thank you for that update. I won't prolong it. Item 15.5 is our annual pitch-in week, pitch-in day, etc. And I look for a mover and seconder for this motion. What?
I'll move.
Oh. So you don't want me to read it? That may be why we're so. Councillor McEwen moves the motions with the whereas and whereas and whereas now therefore. So seconded by Councillor McEwen. And the only thing that we really have to fill in here is when do we want to do pitch-in day? So
Before we fill that
Yeah.
in, I mean, this started off as a pretty good thing, I think, but it's in effect hasn't taken off, okay? Last year, there was too much snow on the ground in April to even do anything. And I don't know whether it was last year or the year before that, we were doing barbecues and stuff, and I was up here cooking the barbecue. And the only people that showed up was Councillor Gore Matthews and her
My
family.
Lions Club.
And the Lions Club and Kath and I. No one, I mean, it just,
Yeah.
I'm not cooking hamburgers and you end up taking them home a lot. We overcooked and like, nobody went out on any roads, and Kath and I eventually did, down Canning Road when the weather got better, but I think we should end this thing right at pitch-in week. We're declaring it pitch-in week, right? Put it in a newsletter, or I guess newsletter's gone, but I don't think we should be doing all this, because.
Actually, I have an idea for something different.
Sure.
Flossie had a talk with a girl that did a discussion. She did one in the morning, one in the evening. We'd only have to do one. And she talked about reducing the amount of plastic in your home. And, you know, we could just have a seminar or lecture, you know, invite people to come, you know, to tie in with using less plastic and taking things to the landfill. We could have tea and coffee and cookies and call it good. And try to educate, do it on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon. And that way people that are up here for the weekend can come as well if they're interested.
And then after that, we could hand out the plastic bags for them to go collect the stuff off the road, right?
It's just an idea.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be.
I just got that.
No, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I mean, I
It's a
guess.
great idea.
And you know, it might be an opportunity for us to you know, to talk up a little bit the whole, you know, recycling waste management kind of
We
issue.
could have our flyers, if there's things ready on time for people to get information about the changes that we're making as well at that event.
But I guess what you're suggesting is that there be a specific day, whether we call it pitching.
Yeah, I've spoke to her and she's willing to come in April. I just told her that I need to confirm it. You guys.
Do you know what day you would?
No, I told her we needed to choose our pitching week, and if you give me like either the Saturday before or the Saturday ending pitching week, and I can confirm with her which is better for her.
I mean, would it even have to be in that period of time? Like, could it be, then would you be better to do it on, you know, May 2nd or something like that?
Or in the summer.
Whatever you prefer. I was just
Well,
trying
yeah.
to link it in with pitching week.
Well, why can't we link it in with what we're doing at the landfill site?
So do you want to just take the day out of here and think more about that?
That's what I suggest,
Yeah.
and then we can always pick a date later on, once the task force is done, and then combine that with this lady coming in, if that's May or June or whenever, and then, you know, and then we can have pamphlets and people drop in and shoot, you know, that, you know, versus being in April, right? We can make more of a half day of it or something.
So I'm prepared to strike that last paragraph if that's what you want. I mean, and we can come back and do something. All right. So is that the wish of the group?
Yeah.
All right. So we don't have a pitch-in day specifically, but we'll declare pitch-in month and we'll publicize it. So we'll figure. That means, practically speaking, that before we get into April, we'll have to figure out what it is we're going to do. So, like, sometime in the month of March, right? Let's say we'll have to.
Are we going to still advertise that if people want to pick up garbage, they can pick up gloves and bags at the municipal office?
Yes, we have that. We have those.
I would.
Bags in the-
I would.
Put it on the website.
I would encourage us to do that still, because there are some people who will go out. Maybe not the day that you.
Yeah.
If the day that you have a barbecue, that you decide to do it, it doesn't work for some people. Like, I remember I wasn't even here. But I know that there were some people who go along and pick stuff up on sections of their roads, right? We do. We go along the Washkish Road, we find stuff, we pick it up. Right?
Sure.
Yes?
Yeah, I think it's good to continue to promote Pitch-in Week. Personally, I do a section of 124 from Farley's Road up to, or down to Dunchurch Estates. and back in the States a little bit. And then there's people who do the States Road annually. They have a day that they do their cleanup. I think just having the connection with Pitch In Week is good. There are probably a lot of people around we're not aware of, and they do their own little bits of cleanup and this and that. Whether they do it on those specific days, and I'm one of them. Remember last year, Beth, I was driving around doing something else, and I picked up some of your catch for you, but I wasn't picking stuff up that day myself. It's just sort of, but good luck for you that I came along that day.
You and Fowler came and picked up some of our stuff. They were doing a road patrol and she picked up all the garbage.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we,
2-minute break.
sure.
We got much left.
Well, let's take, well, we don't really, but let's take a vote on this before, and then if you, can we approve the motion? No, can we approve the motion as it is, please? All in favor? Thanks. Okay, 2-minute break. We should get back to things, or we're going to lose our half hour here. I guess the recess doesn't count. So next item is an update on it says Roma. And I was going to do this at the last meeting, but we did time out, and I won't give you all the details, but let me just. This is about the delegation. The CAO clerk and I did attend Roma. It was in Toronto at the Sheraton Downtown Hotel, and it went for a couple of days. And there were a variety of sessions and meetings, pretty good. Lots of politicians there. There's one of the features of these things, if you haven't been there, is what they refer to as the bear pit, which is in this particular case about 20 cabinet ministers in a great big row across the whole stage of one of the main rooms there. And it was a Q&A from the floor, moderated by one of our friends, Nigel Belchamber, that you may remember. And he, so people asked questions of the various. They were all cabinet ministers, basically, and I'm going to say there were 20 of them in attendance. So it was well attended at that particular part. And then afterwards, on the last day, we had delegations. There were, and delegations are an opportunity for a municipality to ask to speak to a particular minister about a particular subject. And so, just to see what we could get going, I asked if we could speak to the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, which is John Yakubuski from Pembroke. We wanted to talk about two things. One of them was, the main thing I'll say, was the Magnetawan watershed water level control and the problems with that, and the second thing was problems associated with the permitting process, which we encountered relative to the Wawashkish landings, and other. We encountered them with respect to the public landing at Gooseneck and various other places, and it's a generic problem related to things that are sort of downloaded to municipalities, but for which they don't have proper control in terms of the ability to enforce their bylaws and things of that sort. So those were the two issues that we raised. We did, in fact, get the delegation. So we had a meeting, which was supposed to last, 10 minutes? And it lasted about 20 or 25 because we managed to get the minister engaged, and so I thought it was fairly useful, and was optimistic about it. And what we ended up doing, and I'm happy to share this with council. In fact, there was a kind of a draft of it at the last meeting that was on the tables. Maybe you saw it. But we did do a presentation, and what we said was we have some resources that are available to us at very minimal cost, some expert resources on watershed modeling. that happen to be in this municipality. And I'm talking about people who are recognized authorities on the subject. And they were willing to help us do some work to update the model for the watershed and figure out if there are some strategies that we could use to better control the water. And what we wanted, what we were specifically asking the MNR to do was to have, they have a section in Peterborough that is responsible for water level monitoring. Not management, but monitoring. And so they do and they're supposed to provide municipalities with help in predicting when there might be floods and that sort of thing. They don't really do that. At least they didn't do it last year when the flooding occurred. And so what we wanted them to do is we wanted them to put a little bit of money and resources for traveling to set up some meetings so we could kind of get together and get the municipalities in the watershed, in the Magneto One watershed, which involves, like, we're the most westerly one, unless you count like Britt, but we're, Magneto One certainly is involved, and they knew we were doing this, and Burkes Falls and Armour Township, which is where Katrina is, because they had a bunch of flooding, and their mayor was interested in pursuing this, but he wasn't at Roma. So anyway, Michelle and I were the only ones who made the delegation. The other mayors were not available to participate, but we talked to them about it, and the only thing is I haven't heard back from them yet. So, but I thought we had a good meeting, and they also the assistant deputy minister who is responsible for our whole area was outside the meeting, and he said he would get back to us about fixing the land use permitting stuff. And again, I haven't heard from him, but I was just before I came to this meeting today, sending them a note saying, hey, I haven't heard anything from you. It's a month ago, what's going on? So we'll see. But if we are able to get some kind of a project going, this will have a huge, and can report that at least we've had some meetings, this would be a huge thing for the folks on Mawashkesh at least who are. And I think it would also be, like, this isn't something that we're doing selfishly just for Whitestone. It would be, we would figure out how to make it work for some of the other participants too. And there is evidence that, we're going to come to this in a minute, but there's evidence that the ministry is sort of taking more seriously the need to keep municipalities informed about what's going on with water level things. So anyway, that's my oral report on the on Roma. If anybody wants, I'm happy to actually send you electronically or on paper if you prefer a copy of the thing that we actually submitted to them. But the purpose of it was to try to get some meetings going and get some stuff resolved. And I think it'll happen. It takes a little time sometimes with these things. So with that, we could move to correspondence. And what I would ask you to do, as we normally do, is to pull out of this list any that you want to have discussed, and then we will simply receive the rest of them, and you'll notice that a whole bunch of them all relate to the same thing. They're all support for Bill 156, which is the farm safety, whatever, Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Safety Act, which has now had second reading. And by the way, at Roma, everybody was saying, everybody who spoke about this was saying, this is wonderful. And they were going and slapping Ernie Hardeman on the back, who's the minister. But it's in progress. And so now everybody's trying to encourage the government to make sure it gets through to the better end. But anyway, what ones would you like to pull out of this list for discussion? Councillor Gorham Matthews.
O,
O?
I'd be interested in that meeting.
Okay. Well, that's an easy one. That's the one I alluded to a second ago, but we'll talk about that.
I figured it was.
Anything else here? Anybody interested in Phonom or any of the other? I'm looking around to see if there are any.
Let's move on, we got 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Just a minute,
Yes.
one real close to home is G, which is the pickleboard courts. Maybe it could be a 10-second.
I can give you a 10-second response to that one, but I'll pull it out, okay? So, with the following extracted, so G
I had O also.
and O. O. Oh, and I'm sorry, there is also, there is an NOP, there's a P, right? Is that what it should be? Yeah, P. And P is this invitation to the, so invitation, I'm sorry. Invitation to Smart Now AGM, okay, we'll call it.
Smart.
It's called Smart Now. This is the Liz McWalters, or, yeah, McWalters thing. Smart Now AGM. Does everybody see it?
Not very well. There's words. It's the worst one I've ever seen. There's words printed on the red.
There are, you're right.
You can't read them.
Anyway, where the date and time is on the back where it says, "Are you
No, I
coming?"
know.
And I'm going to mark it to pull out too, just because I just want to say something real quick. So GOP. So can I get a motion that we've reviewed the correspondence items consisting of A to P, and now therefore be it resolved that council receives the correspondence items contained on page 5 of the agenda dated February 18th, 2020, with the following extracted for further discussion/action, G, O, and P. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Woods. Okay, thank you. Let me just tell you very quickly. Letter G, item G, it's a letter from Pat Shacklady regarding pickleball court. She has corresponded with the rec committee and came to a previous rec committee meeting and pitched this and volunteered to organize it in the spring. What we have to do to make this happen is to buy some pickleball nets and rackets and so on, and pickleballs, which are not very expensive. You'll notice they do this in various places. You'll see it from time to time on the McKellar sign when you go by. And we also have to paint some lines on the floor of the Dundome. What happened in the Dundome? So that's the cost to the municipality. It's in the budget. If you go back and look at the rec committee's budget, which you saw earlier in the agenda, there's an amount in there based on, and she went out and sourced the equipment, and at least said this is what you can get that'll. And it's also the nets are multi-use, so you could use them for badminton, you could use them for volleyball, you could use them for different things. They're not a single use, they're not just the pickleball. And I can't give you all the definition of exactly how pickleball works, but it's a team game that you.
Very, very popular.
Anyway, so the rec committee is prepared to move ahead with this, especially since we have a volunteer who wants to organize it. Now, item O is a letter that you saw there, which is an invitation from the new acting district manager in Parry of the MNRF in Parry Sound. It looks like the previous Stan Duggan, the previous guy, has resigned, previous manager, and or not resigned, retired, and has been replaced. So anyway, what they're doing is they're having a meeting in Magnetawan on the date that's there, and municipal representatives are invited to come. It's my intention to go to that meeting. I'm not, I don't have great expectations that anything earth-shattering is going to be disclosed. I expect it's going to be, we're not responsible for anything that happened, but how could we help you? How could we help you prepare better? In a nutshell, is I think what we're going to hear. But I don't know exactly who's going to be there and presenting and whether there's any technical information. But I think we have to go, we have to put in a presence. And if anyone is particularly interested in going to it, it's all of the municipalities along the Magnetawan watershed have been invited. And I think there's some First Nations that are down, the Magnetawan First Nation that goes through at the end, so they've been probably the people from Britain and so on. So, but it's in Magnetawan. That's where they're holding it. So, all right. So I'll make a note of that you would like to do that. Item P. The invitation to the Smart Now AGM that you can't read all of. They do this every year. It's in the museum on Tower Road, Tower Hill, and the date is the 27th in the evening. I think, to be honest, we should probably send somebody, and I don't think that I can. Oh well.
What's the date, George?
It's Thursday, the 27th of February. I don't think that I can go. I've gone to them in the past, and they again are also sort of in the past they've been non-events because they didn't really have anything to tell us. They might have more to tell us this year because they did receive a small grant, but whether it's going to do anything for...
Carling.
Clerk is shaking her head. It's going to help Carling and McDougall or something.
Just Carling.
Just Carling. Do you have more information about it, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, thank you. I can just tell you quickly. It's a pilot project that they received funding for, and it's affecting two roads, Bayview and Rockwood or Rockway Road in Carling. I have it in the minutes from our last ECDEV meeting. And it's just a pilot project for fiber, and we don't know how much funding was received. It's all very clandestine, but we do have the location, and they're also trying to work with Seguin and other municipalities to build towers to extend the broadband. So I'm going to be attending the meeting simply because I'm the chair of the ECDEV committee, and this is of interest to us. I believe the mayor may be a voting member because I believe Chris Armstrong was, but I can check on that.
Yeah, the last meeting that I went to, which was not last year, but 2 years ago, I got to vote on stuff.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
But I actually went in Chris's place when I went. He wasn't available, so he said, would I go? So is there someone here who is available on that date to go to Parry Sound? And you basically get dinner at it, right?
Not a good day.
I can go if there's value to us going, but I don't really want to go just for the sake of the meeting.
Doesn't sound like there's much value.
Okay, well, at least we're represented because our
Our
clerk is going to, our CIO clerk is going, and I think that would help. I mean, I'll see. It's possible that I could go, but at the moment it doesn't look real convenient, to be honest. Okay. So, did we? I don't record, did we ever pass this motion? I've got a mover, Councillor Lamb moved and Councillor Wood seconded. Did we actually vote on it?
Yeah,
We did?
I think so.
Okay, I was probably so busy writing down the, anyway, you're okay with receiving all these things, and we've discussed them. Councillor items, are there any items you wish to raise? Okay, members of the public. Do you wish to raise something? Member of the public.
I talk fast. Number one, on behalf of the library board, I'd like to thank each and every member of council for your continued support of the library renovation expansion. It means a lot to the board, it means a lot to the community, so thank you very, very much. Secondly, I would like to strongly suggest that if people are getting a subsidy or rate reduction on a room rental, facility rental, that they be required to acknowledge the municipality. It drives me crazy when I see, I went to Diners Club today, but why wouldn't they have said, thanks to the municipality for supplying the room?
They did.
Nothing.
They did.
I think it's really terrible. And I think that should be a condition of people getting it. And I even think Recreation Committee, when they put out stuff, they've got to say Municipality of Whitestone. That's missing, it's a huge gap, and I think that it's got to be addressed in all the communication, that where the funding is coming from. And thirdly, pickleball is the fastest growing activity among seniors next to bird watching. My concern with the use of the Dundome is the water puddles in there. So I think you have to be really careful about putting the activity in there unless you've got some equipment in there. We can get these big, like, things like you do when you wash your windows and like those things. We can, I don't know what you call it.
Squeegees.
Squeegees, yeah. We can sweep the floor. Otherwise, you're going to be into huge risk and liability. That floor is not level. You see that every year, the fall fair when it rains, and there's water down in the pavilion. This is the Dum-Dum. So be really, really careful and make sure you've got the right equipment in place to address the water puddling, because you don't want to see you to slip and fall.
Good point.
That's
Yeah.
my caution.
It was greatly improved about a year ago.
Okay, good.
Year and a half before the last fall fair. This drainage was all completely redone on this side.
Okay.
So it's still there, Kathy, but it's much, much better.
Because I remember when we had the opening for the playground, that floor was wet, and it was
Yeah.
a concern.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I'm referring to.
Yeah, no, sometimes you're right, it is sometimes, and it might be that you would have to, if there was a rainfall and rain actually drove in there
Yeah,
for some
still
reason or
go in.
something, you know, it might have to be canceled. I think we have to, I'll make sure that that comes up in the discussions at the rec committee in terms of organizing it, that there be a, and I mean, maybe our staff have to be involved in making sure that it's actually safe for people to use before they use it. Okay, thank you. I guess that's it. Confirming bylaw, mover and seconder.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Woods. All those in favor? And how about adjournment? Who wishes to adjourn? It was moved by Councillor McEwen, seconded by, okay, I was going to say there's almost nobody, everybody's leaving. Councillor McEwen, seconded by Councillor Brian Woods, and we're adjourned at 21:40. Oh, no, that's not right, is it? 9:38.